In this example, we want to see how to load data from the server and show it in our React application, as well as pass through properties data from parents to children. So we're going to start from exercise 3 start, and this has a server which we have to run. And in fact, we already have it run here. Obviously, we have to run the sync operation. Then we have a GUI, which is a basic React app. We're going to delete a couple of things which we're not going to need, as well as we're going to move our app to a folder called components, as well as its CSS file, corresponding CSS file. Now, we want to have a user list, which is the only thing we're going to have in app. And the user list is going to be a list of user components. We're not going to focus on CSS, however, we're going to get some CSS code so everything looks a bit nicer. So in app, we're only going to have the user list and the header. So we're not going to care about all this stuff. So we're going to have a header and a user list. Now, user list is not yet a React component, but we're going to create it shortly. After you've created it, this will make sense. So import user list from /user list. Now, user list is going to be a functional component, so function user list. We don't care about the props in this case, but we could use them. And we're going to export default user list. The function will return something which is going to be a div. And in this case, we're going to have a class here, which we're going to use to apply our CSS. Now we're going to need to keep the user somewhere, so in order to do that, we're going to need to have some state. So use state. And we're going to use our use state to have a list of users. This is manage state. So whenever the list of users changes, the component is going to get redrawn. We're going to start from an empty list of users. Now, the next thing we're going to want to have is a way to get data from the server. So let's just call it get users. And this is just going to perform a get request. So we're going to have an async, which is going to fetch something. And here we're going to need some sort of constant to keep our server. Typically we'd have this in a config, but we're not going to bother with this right now. So we're going to request server.users, which is going to give us the list of users. This is going to be in response. Then we're going to extract the data. And set users of data. Now this is going to happen once. In this case it's sufficient, and it's going to happen whenever the component is first drawn. And in order to reflect this logic, we're going to use a use effect. Now to have it only run once, we have to have the use effect have a dependency list of an empty array. Right? This means no dependencies. Now whenever one of the dependencies changes, right, so we have no dependencies, what we're going to do is run this function, and in this case it's get users. when this is performed, we're then going to have in our user list, we're going to render one user component for each of our users. This is going to mean that we're going to have a user with we're going to have to map users to user components where the item being presented is E, and we're also going to have a key which is going to be e.id. Now all that's left is to fill in the user component. This is going to be a functional component, so user, this time of props, we need the props. We're going to extract so the structure item from the props. And we're going to return something to visualize our user. So this is going to be div. And again, we're going to use some classes so we can better style them afterwards. So we're going to be user. And this is going to be username. And then it's going to be full name. And this is going to suffice for now, although our users also have a type. And if we look in the browser right now, we forgot to, when we move the component, the app to the components folder, we forgot to update our import. As well as to import our user. So now we're going to also put a default export here. So now we can see our list of users. All that's left is to plug in our CSS. We're not going to discuss it as much. So let's just put in our user CSS. Our users are going to be represented as little squares. So we have user CSS. We have user list, which is going to be a flex display. And that should be it. So if we refresh this, we also have to import the CSS files. So we can import them just like any other, like a module. It's going to be import userlist.css. And in user, import user.css. And this is our list of users.